Good morning and happy Friday. I wanted to pop on here this morning because, well, if you and I were sitting down for coffee, which I wish we were, how would you describe your week? Like if you had to describe your week in one word, what word would it be? Would it be the B word, busy, full, scattered, distracted, overwhelming, enough? There are so many words that could describe our week. And so I'm curious, what would that word be for you? Because I think it's really important that we pause to say, well, what kind of a week did I have? Now, let me just make one disclaimer that I always say it doesn't have to be an entire week like that, right? Because at any moment we can stop and reset. And yet, when you look back, what is most pressing, prevailing, true about your week? I'd love to hear what word that is. So if you're joining me live, drop the word in the chat, or when you're listening to the replay, you can go ahead and drop that in the comments somewhere around this video. What word would you use to describe this week? Not the week you wish you had this week, but the actual week that you had. And I'm wondering, would you use the word faithful? I don't think many of us would probably say, yes, I had a faithful week. But the truth is, it's really underneath what we really want our week to look like, right? A faithful week is not a perfect week. It is not an everything went according to plan. It is not a I checked off every single box that I put on my to-do list. It is a week where you were faithful to exactly what it was time for. And that changes everything about your week and then how you step into the next week. And so today, as I've been reflecting on the conversations I've been having with women lately. So I work with women who are doing something to put out in the world what the Lord has called them to. So whether that's you're running a business, you're leading a team, you're shepherding a ministry, you're serving your community, you're just trying to keep your home and your family together, like this is for you. And what I find is we get to Friday, right? And we all can look back and say, wow, that was a week. And then say, well, I sure hope that next week is going to be better, right? Have you been there? Have you said, well, maybe next week, or this week just wasn't typical. So then we kind of make the excuse why went the way that it went, or it felt the way that it felt. And what I find is there are three types of women. There are the women who go into the week with a plan, but life happens. And by Tuesday at 10 a.m., it's already off the rails. They're the women who crash land into Monday, pray to make it till Friday and hoping that something of value got done in between. And then they're the people that just say, you know what? I made a plan. And yes, it didn't go exactly according to plan, but as I stayed intentional and focused and purposeful, I just kept working, right? And I kept trusting the Lord to lead me through this week. So I wonder, where are you? Are you a girl who has a really solid plan for the week and you feel like it guides you throughout your week? Are you the girl who tries to have a plan, but again, by Tuesday at 10 a.m., it's already off the rails? Are you the girl that just crash lands into Monday and says, why am I even going to bother planning? Because let's be honest, real life doesn't always go according to plan. So wherever you find yourself today, I want to have this conversation with you because I think it really matters. And I think it really matters on a Friday, because this is what is going to help us to think about the next week so that we don't keep repeating the pattern and doing the same thing, expecting a different result. You know what they call that, right? Insanity, right? And so let's talk about, why does your week keep falling apart by Tuesday at 10 a.m., right? And why a better schedule probably isn't the answer. Because I know we all think, I just need to get more organized. I just need to be, better at managing my time, and then my week will feel different. So let's talk about real life, right? What does your real life look like on a Friday at it's 9:05 a.m. where I am, right? Were you that woman who planned Sunday night? You got everything all organized, color-coded, lined up. You started Monday determining what was going to be different this week. And then Tuesday happened, right? Maybe you had a meeting that ran late. Maybe someone needed something. Maybe someone got sick. An appointment got moved. Something takes twice as long as you expected. I can just say, even showing up at the wrong time for a meeting. I had all of those things happen this week to me. And then suddenly you're thinking, well, there goes my week, right? How many of us then say, well, I'll start over Monday. And we think that that's going to be our fix, right? It's going to be a new week and a new plan. And while there is something about a freshness to it, there's something about a Friday where we look back on the week before we head into the next one. to make it different. And so today I want to show you why I don't think the answer is just about getting better at controlling your calendar. Now, is it important to know where your time is going and be intentional with it? Yes, and amen. But I want to introduce you guys to some shifts that have actually changed the way that I plan my week, and not just the way I plan my week, but the way that I live my week. So this is where faithful planning meets real life, okay? Because we are not living in a vacuum. We're not living in a silo or on an island. We are in a place where there's a lot of rings, dings, and pings, right? People that are constantly wanting our time and attention. And then we've got all these voices that are going on inside of us. Yes, I'm so glad, right? We don't let one day totally derail us. So thank you for that, Kathy, right? And I want to show you a framework that is going to help you stop crash landing into Monday and make something that you can return to when life unravels, right? By Tuesday at 10 a.m. I don't know if it's Tuesday at 10 a.m. for you. Maybe you don't even make it through Monday. Maybe by sheer grace, you make it till Thursday before you feel like things are coming off the rails, right? It doesn't matter where that is. Hey, Jen, glad you're hopping on here. What we want to start off with is this, okay? The problem starts way before your planner, okay? I think so many of us think that it all starts with the minute that, I wake up, I make my to-do list, I put that next thing on the plan. And this is where so many planning systems get it wrong. Because what do? They start with what do I need to do today? How many of you woke up this morning or before the week started and you're like, what do I need to do today? And you either made that really big, long list that was longer than your arm and kept getting added to all week long, or you put all that stuff right in all these little blocks on your calendar and are like, okay, I have my plan. Well, what I love is that as believers, we don't have to start there with what do I need to do. We start with looking at our time and looking at it from a whole different perspective, because Scripture invites us to look carefully before we start filling our calendar. So for those of you who've been hanging out with me in Redeem Her Time for a long time, you probably can quote Ephesians 5:15-16 by heart. And if you're new, this is something that everything that I teach is based out of this. In fact, Redeem Her Time was literally born in the pew when I had walked into church one day, asked a friend, how was your week? Right? So here's the question I asked at the beginning. If you're just joining us live now, I started off by saying, describe your week in one word to me. Well, this friend described her week as busy, right? How many of us would probably say, oh yeah, it was busy. And what I noticed is she had this smile on her face, but that look in her eye. Where like you guys are making eye contact and that there's like a whole deeper story behind that smile and that answer she just gave you. And I remember sitting down after talking to her and thinking about the fact that, wow, Lord, like, is this really what you have for us? That we're just going to be busy all week long, show up to another week and then be busy again. And it was that morning that we were in Ephesians, and all of a sudden it just like literally leaped off the page. And I wrote it down in the back of my bulletin that day. Redeem Her Time came right out of Ephesians 5:15-16, which says, look carefully how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, redeeming the time because the days are evil. Now, that's not meaning that, the devil is in your calendar, but there are a lot of things of the world that are trying to get our attention off of where we're actually, why we're here, what our time is for, and where it's supposed to be leading us. And so I love that Scripture starts with looking carefully first and evaluating, is this wise or is this unwise? Right? How many of us actually stop to ask that question before, for example, you wake up your phone, right? Like, this is the thing that if you ever want to see, like, okay, I don't feel like I have time. I always tell women, go into your settings, open up that screen time and look at that number. That number does not lie. It is going to tell you exactly how much time you gave to this device in the last 24 hours or whatever time frame you're looking at, right? How many of us asked the question before we woke that thing up every time we picked it up? They say the average person touches their phone 2,617 times a day. That's crazy. Spending an average of 4 hours and 37 minutes a day on our phone. And that's just average. So some of you might be double. Even if you were average, I used to be a math teacher, so I like to kind of nerd out a little bit. That would literally be just shy of 100 days of your life that you gave to this per year. And we say that we don't have time, right? So he is encouraging us to stop and look carefully first before we just give our time to something, because it might be wise and it might be unwise. But when we just go, okay, what am I going to do next? And it's just the next thing that flips in our head, then our time is literally getting thrown all over the place. And so one of the things that the Lord's been really showing me as I've been on this journey, because I was the time management girl. I was the girl that thought, I just need to get more organized. I just need to have better time blocks. I need a better system. I need a better planner. Who here has a stack of planners at home? I just talked to somebody yesterday. She goes, I'm trying to figure out what to do with all those planners that I bought that I'm never going to go back to. Thankfully, she found the Redeem Her Time planner. So she's loving it because it's so different. But right, so many of us think the answer is in the system or the planner or in the time management. And I believe that too. Hook, line, and sinker. I tried that for a really long time. And guess what? I still felt busy. It still felt like my attention was scattered all over the place. It still felt like I was behind. It still felt like I wasn't getting everything done in the day. And it literally took a doctor calling me crazy to get my attention that I had a problem with my time. And I could have accepted a pill in that moment, but I knew for me that was going to be the Band-Aid that would let me keep living at that pace. And living at that pace was not what the Lord is calling me to do. And so God started getting hold of my heart in lots of little ways, and then in some really big ways, to slow me down to the fact that the problem wasn't just in my calendar. It was in here, right? It was what was going on inside. And it had everything to do with my relationship with him. And it's been really neat just how the Lord has been just shaping this journey, because I think we all want to jump into the methodology, right? Lissa, tell me how to time block. Lissa, tell me how to organize my calendar, my to-do list, my goal, like whatever the thing is. And those are all really good things, but not if we start there, right? And here is where the Lord has really showed me that it's not just about starting with the methodology with our time. What am I doing with it? But it's starting with a theology of our time. What do I believe about it? And more importantly, what do I believe about the author of time, right? Like when it starts there with, wait, who gave me this time? Why did he give me this time? And what am I supposed to be doing with it? That right theology is going to lead to a right methodology, right? So when we start working on what do I believe about time and who gave it to me and how it fits into this bigger picture and this bigger story that goes way beyond my 80, 100 years, whatever I get here on earth, that is going to shape everything about what we do with it. That's what redeeming our time is all about. We're living today in light of that day. We're living today in light of the fact that this time isn't something to manage or control. Did you know that when we talk about time management, to manage literally means to keep contained or under control? I say, okay, great. That's like, and I love, Jen, you pulled this out the other day in one of our conversations, that is like playing whack-a-mole all day long. Because what happens? You get all your ducks lined up and they don't stay in line, right? And so then all day long, you're just trying to keep them back, get them back in place. And it is a constant game that we are playing and never winning when we're trying to manage, keep things under control. But time instead is actually something that we are to steward. Stewardship means I've been given something that doesn't belong to me. It belongs to an owner who owns a whole lot, right? He's entrusting this to me, and he wants me to invest it on his behalf in order to expand what he's building, right? So like if I gave you $1,000 and said, hey, would you like take this $1,000 for me while I'm going away on my trip? And I come back and I ask for the $1,000. Well, first of all, you could have put it in your mattress, right? And then just been like, Lissa, here's your $1,000. I kept it safe. That's what that servant did back in Matthew 25, where he was, he took what he'd been given. Don't feel bad for him. One talent is actually 20 years' wages. So take what you earned last year times 20. He actually had been given a lot, but he just kept it contained. He kept it controlled, right? He buried it in the ground so it didn't get away. And what was the master's response? Get away from me, you wicked and lazy servant. In other words, that wasn't why I gave it to you. You actually did against what was the purpose of that, right? So if you were to like hide my $1,000 in your mattress and just hand it back to me, okay, thank you for keeping it safe. I could have just done that in the bank, right? And that's what he actually told them. You could have at least put it in the bank and earned me a little bit of interest. Or you could have gone shopping and been like $1,000 in my bank account. Thank you, Lissa, right? And now you're on Amazon and now you're on Target.com and now you're wherever you are. And then I come back and you're like, oh yeah, well, okay, here's what's left. I've spent some of it. Hope you don't mind. What do you think my response might be? Right? But what if you were like those other two servants, right? It didn't matter that one of them had double what the other one had, or actually more than double. What mattered was the fact that they did something with it according to the purposes of the owner, because they had a relationship with the owner. Remember that other servant? He said, I thought you were the kind of guy who would get mad. He didn't even know the owner, right? But these other two servants, they knew the owner. They knew that it didn't belong to them. It had been entrusted to them. And so what did they do? They invested it on his behalf. Now, we don't know exactly what they did. I bet there was some buying and selling, some planting and reaping, there were probably some losses along the way, right? I'm sure not everything turned out exactly according to plan. But in the end, they had more, in fact, double, that they were able to then hand back to the master. And what did they hear? Well done, good and faithful servant. There's our word again, faithful, right? Would you describe this past week as faithful? Again, it doesn't mean that it was perfect. It doesn't mean that everything went according to plan or you checked off every box. But would the master, the Lord, say, well done, good and faithful servant. You took what I entrusted to you. You invested it according to what you knew was a priority to me and what I've specifically called you to right now in this season. And there's fruit coming out of it. Now, again, some of that fruit can be measured in tangible things, like maybe clients coming in or people that, are being served by your ministry or whatever the thing is. And a lot more of that has to do with the eternal fruit, the things that are going on in hearts and minds and lives and things like that. And so I want to remind you, as we're looking at our week, your time wasn't something to manage or keep under control this week. So if that's how you were measuring your effectiveness, then this is actually really good news because it's really about stewardship. And this is actually the foundation of everything that we do here at Redeem Her Time, right? And that is why I just created a brand new resource called the Faithful Week Framework that I just released yesterday as part of the Stewardship Circle. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But first, I want to give you something that you can do like right now, okay? Okay, so what most of us do in our week, right? Because you may do this. You may have a Friday time where you sit down and you look ahead to the next week, okay? So what we often do is we time block our week, right? And we get everything all neatly in those boxes and it looks really pretty on paper. And maybe even you add the color coding or maybe you do it digitally where you can see it and move things around and everything looks neat and organized and like, okay, this is going to go well. And then what happens? That planning meets real life, right? And I often say when we haven't put enough space in between those blocks, right? Or when we've blocked every single hour of our day, it's going to look like a pileup on the 405. Right? It's going to look like everything just crash lands into itself when that train gets off the rails because there is no space for any of it. And now we're just reacting all day long. That's what happens when we do that rigid time blocking. And so what I want to introduce you to is a whole different concept that's called time anchoring, right? I want you to think about a boat. All right. So we had a speedboat back in the day very often, like on Saturdays, we would go and take our boat out and enjoy being together as a family. And if we wanted to take a break, right, then what we would do is we would drop an anchor. What does an anchor do? Well, an anchor keeps the boat in a kind of an area that we want to stay, right? And so we would drop that anchor and then we could just eat our lunch or we'd jump out of the boat and swim or whatever it was that we were doing. And the boat wasn't drifting without us realizing it, over to the shore or into an area where we're going to get stuck in the weeds or where it's too shallow and now we're going to start ruining the hull of our boat. It kept us in that place. But here's the thing, that anchor always had a rope line. Okay. And here's the thing. I remember watching my dad throw it out there and thinking, why do you need so much rope? It's not that deep here for how much rope you're putting out. But the reason that you put that much rope out is because number one, you want to make sure it does actually hit the bottom. So that way it's going to keep you in place. But you also need to give enough space so that when the wind and when the waves come, it doesn't like make your boat crash into something, right? Because if it's too tight and too taut, then that is what is going to happen. And guess what? Another boat would drive by, right? And their wake would come and, rock us a little bit, or the wind would start blowing, right? And it's like, whether it was a really big wave or whether it was just something slight, the fact that there was some give in that rope was really, really healthy. And it still kept us within that space. Right. And so this is what I want you to start thinking about when it comes to your time. When we have too tight of time blocks, right, what happens is it doesn't give room for real life. Now, here's what I want to say is that the problem isn't structure, right? So we need the anchor. We need a certain amount of line. We need something that's going to keep us in this safe place or in this space that we want to stay in, right? So we do need some structure. So it's not that you don't need structure, but the problem is that we have too tight of a structure. And then, we don't know when we're planning on a Friday exactly what Tuesday at 10 a.m. is going to hold. And no wonder our plans start unraveling by that time. I'm so glad that you love the planner. And intentionally in the planner, Jenny's got the planner. I did not put any times because I want you to be able to draw your time anchor zones. I want you to be able to say, this is the zone in which I'm focusing on this. And this is how you start building the faithful week, because you start giving every priority a zone, a home, not every minute a task. Okay, can I say that again? We're going to give every priority a zone or a home, but not every minute a task, right? And so what then we do then is say, okay, what are the things that actually matter this week? And then I'm going to teach you in that faithful week framework, what are the 5 time zones, the time anchor zones that each of us needs to have in our day. They're going to look a little bit different based on the season you're in. If you've got kids at home, if you've got a full-time job that you do on top of ministry or business, like your time anchor zones might look a little bit different than somebody else's, but all of us have the same 5. We all have 2 where we need to be refilling: body, mind, spirit. I love to make that the bookend of my day, how I started my day, how I end my day. And then we all have the times of our day that we're pouring out, right? Whether it's into our home and family, or whether it's into the work that God has called us to, whether that's running a business, leading the ministry, serving in your community, maybe even caretaking full time, right? We need then some way to say, how can I be faithful with the things that God has given me to do in this season, and then specifically in this week? And that is why we need what I call a light structure. And that's what the Faithful Week framework is all about. And like I said, I just finished that, put the final touches on that yesterday. And so inside of there, when you come into the stewardship circle, you get that immediately. And I'm going to walk you through how to build your own Faithful Week template around your time anchor zones. And what I love is this then becomes a tool that every Friday, when you sit down to plan out the next week, you're not starting from scratch. You can already see, where are my reoccurring commitments? Where are my priorities? Where's my margin? How am I making sure that I don't get to the end of a week every week and say, gosh, where did the time go? Or I didn't have time for that, right? And so that is included immediately when you join the stewardship circle. All you need to do is upgrade inside Redeem Her Time, and you will get that right away. And what I decided to do, because of the fact that I love to reward people that don't waste time, is that I'm giving special introductory pricing when you become an annual subscriber through Tuesday. Okay, so all you need to do is head over to the subscribe page. So redeemhertime.com/subscribe. And that will then give you that opportunity to come into the stewardship circle. And then you can get that tool. And then I'll be sharing a little bit more with you about what else is coming on. Okay, so the first thing that we talked about was the fact that the problem starts way before our planner, right? It's not just our to-do list. It's not just our calendar. It's what's going on here and what's going on here, right? It's our heart. It's the method. It's the theology before the methodology, but they build on each other. The second thing we talked about is why your time blocking breaks down. The fact that they're so rigid, right, that it doesn't give room for real life. And so we talked about the difference between time blocking and time anchoring, and how that still gives you the structure you need for the things that matter, but not so tightly packed that you can't respond to life. Because guess what? Who here had life happen this week? Things that you did not know were going to come up, were going to be said, were going to be needing your time and attention. That was me, right? This is us all the time. And so if we're approaching our week like it has to be, this tightly packed time block week, then we're not going to be able to respond in the way that we know we really want to. We're not going to be able to show up fully present to those things. The last thing I want to just really touch on, and then I have to actually head out to an appointment, is that when life goes off the rails, not if, when life goes off the rails, when your plans, whether it's by Tuesday at 10 a.m., whether it's you made it all the way till Friday at 9:24, instead of saying, I will restart Monday, how about you just say, I'm going to return right now. This is how your whole week doesn't have to be defined by one word, because at any point, instead of waiting till Monday or even waiting till the next day, you can say, I'm just going to return to what I know is mine to do, what I know matters, right? How many of us, right, are like, man, I blew today, right? Or my entire week is shot, right? And so then we just say, I'm going to start tomorrow, or I'm going to start Monday. But when you return instead of restart, then here's the beautiful thing. One interruption doesn't ruin the day, right? One thing doesn't throw everything off. Now, may it change things? Sure. But it doesn't mean that I just throw up my hands and go, why bother? Or feel like I'm fighting the clock or the calendar or my to-do list all day long, right? And so here is when you then have these time anchor zones, life happens, guess what? You can then simply pause say, look at what that tells you and ask this really important question. You guys ready for this really important question? If you've been hanging out with me, you probably already know. I'm so glad you're watching from Africa. I would love to hear what time it is in Africa. Speaking of time, it's 9:25 where I am in the morning on a Friday. Okay, so well, let's start with the question most of us ask about our time. The number one question that I bet you ask, because I poll people on this all the time, is what time is it? Right? You look at your watch, you look at your phone, you look at your computer, the clock on the wall, and you say, what time is it? And then immediately, what is your response? Usually it's, right? It's some kind of like hurry, angst, I'm behind, I need to catch up, time got away from me, how could it be that time already? Right? And then we're right back into that mode of the rat race, trying to get right back, right, to where we think that we need to be. So instead of saying, how do I catch up? What time is it? Right? How do I get where I'm supposed to be? I'm going to give you a simple shift from what time is it to what is it time for? Do you notice when you ask that question, you can't hurry. You actually have to pause. What is it time for? That forces you to slow down to a couple of things. Number one, you do have time. So no more saying, I don't have time. Yes, you do. Right? But secondly, what is the purpose of your time? What is this time right in front of me right now for? Right? At 9:27 a.m. on a Friday morning, what is this time for me right now? And then I give my full focus to whatever it is that it is time for. This is really what is at the heart of so many things that I teach. And this is what the Faithful Week framework is going to help you ask and answer, not only before your week starts, because that's really important. If we're only asking that question in the moment, you're still going to feel like you're all over the place. But this question works so beautifully when you sit down on a Friday and you look ahead to the next week and say, what is it time for next week? And then use those time anchor zones to build out this really simple time anchor guide that's going to help guide your time throughout the week. This is also a really great question to ask in the morning. So you wake up on a Monday morning or a Tuesday morning, and you've already got some things down, right? Because you did your faithful planning the week before. But now you're really able to say, Lord, hey, this is what I was planning. Here's what I thought it was going to be time for today. Are there any adjustments we're making today? Because again, things may have changed since the time you sat down and wrote it down to when you're actually living that day. This is also a really good question to ask in the moment. If you feel yourself frantic or bouncing from one thing to one thing, or you just feel like you're behind or whatever that like hurry, scurry emotion is that's coming up, all you have to do is pause and say, I pause and I go, Lissa, Lord, the Lord and I have this conversation all day long. What is it time for right now? Because I can get in my head, right? And I'm like in yesterday or in tomorrow or, next week or next year. How many of you can do that, right? What is it time for right now? Like, yes, I need to know where all this is going, but then what is it time for right now? Because as long as I'm chasing this time, either in the past or in the future, I'm missing out on the opportunity of the time that's right in front of me. And so this is really the foundational question that we have to start asking is, what is it time for? And when we put these three shifts together, it starts to change everything. It doesn't mean your week is going to be perfect, but I really, truly believe you will get to the end of the week and be able to say, I feel like I was faithful this week. Right? And so what are the three shifts in case you're joining us a little bit later? We talked about time is not something we are here to manage, to just keep contained or under control. Well, that's a good thing. It's not the thing. Time is this beautiful gift that God lays in front of us each and every day that he has entrusted to us to then go invest to expand his kingdom, right? That's what stewards do. And so when we start approaching it not as time management, but as time stewardship, that puts a whole different perspective on our time. It's not just about the here and now. And it's not just about you, right? It's about our relationship with the author of time, why he's given us time in the first place, which is why I'm so excited to walk out this conversation here on Substack, because I don't think we really stop and look at that. We just think time is the thing that helps me get stuff done. Guess what? Scripture actually says something way different. So I hope you're following along on that conversation we're having on the podcast and in the articles that come out each week. But long story short, time is not something that God asked us to manage. It is a gift he gives us every day to steward. And that starts shifting everything, right, at a heart level. Then, okay, great. We got the right theology. So now, Lissa, what do I do? The methodology. Give me something to do, because I actually have to have something on paper, right? So here's where we move from those rigid time blocks to those responsive time anchors, right? And we give our time the ability to breathe, and yet still to define the space in which we want to stay, right? And this is how we are able to be faithful with our focus, because we know what it's time for. And that has everything to do with that right methodology with our time. And then when we think about who do you become over time, this is really the beautiful gift of time the Lord is showing me as I walk through scripture and look for what he has to say about it. We become a kind of person who doesn't say, I'll just wait till Monday, who says, okay, Lord, yeah, maybe life happened and it was out of my control. Maybe I was the one who got distracted and I just started scrolling. I mean, it can happen either way, right? But we can be the kind of person that says, Lord, I know that you are beyond all of this. Help me return to what it's time for right now. Like that's the becoming part of that. This is where time is not just a utility thing. It's actually a shaping thing. It's a forming thing. And that is the deeper conversation and support that I'm providing inside the stewardship circle, because this is how we're going to approach our weeks and come out at the end of a day, the week, maybe even an hour saying, okay, I faithfully stewarded the time the Lord had given me. Not perfectly, right? But I stopped and asked the question, Lord, why did you give me today? Why did you give me this hour? Why did you give me this week? And what is it time for? And when we do that, that makes all the difference. So if that's something that's resonating with you, then I want to invite you into the stewardship circle. You can go right to my homepage and it says, join the stewardship circle. It'll tell you a little bit more about it and just click the link to do that. You can go to the subscribe page and do it there as well. But here's what you get when you come inside the stewardship circle. Number one, you get the Faithful Week framework. This is a tool that I think is so foundational to building a week that doesn't have to start off over every Monday, that doesn't fall off the rails at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. That is where faithful planning meets real life and actually gives you something that you can live. So if you've been using all of the other tools that, looked good on paper, but then didn't actually happen in real life, like this is going to be that breath of fresh air that's going to help you see like there is actually a way that I can plan and trust that I don't know it all as I step into a new week. So the Faithful Week framework, you get like immediately. There's an email that comes to you with a link right there. So like within seconds, that is in your hands and you can start walking through that and using that and building out your Faithful Week framework. But then I know it's not just about, like I'm reading these things. I've got this great resource. It's like, how do I actually live this out? And so what I'm going to do for Stewardship Circle members only is I'm going to do a monthly Faithful Living workshop. And we're going to be building the stewardship field guide. Like every single month, we're going to have a different focus of like, how do we approach this? For example, I'm in a season right now of waiting for something. And there are a lot of things that I can't control. There are a lot of things that I can't do anything about. And so how do we do that? How do we approach like Q4 planning, right? Those of you who are running a business, you're running a ministry, you have a project or a goal or something that you would love to see happen before the end of the year. How do we approach that as believers and not just make it like all the other productivity people who are just out there saying, this is the goal I'm going to hit and here's how I'm going to get there, right? So we're going to actually walk that out together each month and you'll have the opportunity to get support around that. And you also have an opportunity to get timely guidance and support inside the Stewardship Circle chat, because inside of there, this is where you can ask questions. You can share what's going on. You can say, hey, Lissa, it's 10 a.m. on a Tuesday and everything just, went off plan. How do I get back on? How do I return instead of just waiting until next Monday? And I want you to feel like you've got that, real-time support, because this is what we're walking out real time, right? This is everyday life. And so what I decided to do is from now and through Tuesday, I'm going to offer special pricing for the annual membership. We're going to get it way less than what it's going to be going up to after Tuesday. So you're going to want to make sure that if this is something that you want, that you head over to either go to on my website, go to where it says join the Stewardship Circle, and that will get you in there, or just go to the subscribe page here on Substack, and you can do that as well. Because after that, it's still going to be a ton of value, right? But it's going to be more for that. And we're going to be starting to get ready for our first monthly training, which is going to be coming up. Which is going to be for paid subscribers only. And it's going to be our fall stewardship retreat. I'm not calling it a webinar. I'm not calling it a workshop, because who needs another one of those, right? We are going to retreat from all of our doing. And we're going to actually pause. I'm going to walk you through, how do I faithfully look at this fall, right? Instead of just jumping in and saying yes to all the things we've always said yes to, or letting everybody else throw their, things that they want us to say yes to in our calendars. How do we actually faithfully steward our time and pay attention to what it's time for and what it's not time for, right? I know so many of us, we love this summer season because it feels like we kind of get that break where, things at church may be taking a break for the summer, or maybe your business or your ministry looks a little bit different in summer. And it's just, and we start thinking right now, like, oh, fall is coming. what if this fall doesn't have to feel like every other fall has? What if this fall could feel like, okay, it wasn't perfect, but I was faithful with the time the Lord entrusted to me, and I can come out on the other end saying, here, Lord, here's what I did with what you gave me, and here, well done, good and faithful servant. So I have to literally run to an appointment, so I'm going to get going, but I would love to have you join the Stewardship Circle where we can really walk this out together on a whole deeper level. So if you've been here and part of Redeem Her Time and you want to share how this has shifted things for you, I mean, I get messages from women all the time that say, I tried all the programs, the planners, the All Start Monday plans, and never really saw anything change until we came to Redeem Her Time. And still we started looking at what scripture has to say. And still we started asking, what is it time for? And instead of trying to manage our time, started stewarding it. You guys, this is where things shift, and where next Friday can feel like you're in a whole different world. And so I'm super excited for you guys to walk with me in this, and would encourage you, if you have another friend, whether they're a business bestie or someone that is on your team or a part of a ministry or in your community, who also ever mentions, girl, what happened to my time? Or where did the time go? Or I never have enough time, or time feels like it always gets away. Like, you can share this with her as well, because I truly believe this is exactly what all of us as Christian women who want to be faithful need in our lives. So, all right, well, I'm going to have to head out of here. If there's any other questions you guys have just on what we talked about today, feel free to drop them in comments, and I will make sure to come back to them after my appointment. And I'll see you guys inside the Stewardship Circle.